Welcome to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. I'm your host, Dave Fearon. I'm sure you're all familiar with the phrase talking shop, which is something that tells us that we're in conversation with a person or persons who have the same sort of practice, the same sort of interests that draw us to continuing that practice and talking with each other about it. Could be chess players to chess players, mechanics. In this case, this is a conversation with an educator, David Fearon, with educator, Mike Stratton. It seems so comfortable talking shop with Mike. He's done many things so far in his still early career that have to do with teaching, supporting teaching, scholarships, designing, programming, you name it. And Mike is either doing it or thinking about doing it. And now he's a leader in a business school. So that is a whole different realm of being an educator. Fostering the learning climate for faculty and students in a business school representing a hugely dynamic universe called business. What do they know about business that they can help students understand when business itself is changing so fast we can barely keep track? Well, Mike the educator can figure that out, I'm sure. So here is my hero, Mike Stratton. Well, folks, I've secured a president for us tonight. Are you ready for that? No, not the one who's involved right now running the country, but someone who has definitely earned the title of president in my esteem, because Michael Stratton is the president of the Management and Organization Behavior Teaching Society, soon to move on to other pursuits in terms of his volunteer work. But that's been a huge reason that I've been following Mike and occasionally trying to help out. But Mike has also recently become a dean of a business school. Mike, welcome, and tell us the name of your college and the school.
Thanks, Dave. Glad to be here. Appreciate it. I am dean of the J. Whitney Bunting College of Business at Georgia College and State University, the designated public liberal arts university of the state of Georgia.
Wow. Now, that's a good place to start. First, folks, let me just say, I told Mike before we started, rather than put one or two titles, president, dean, and so forth, into the picture here to explain Mike's practice, there's a much more encompassing way that I think of Mike, and that is an educator, a real down-to-earth giving educator who sees opportunities for extending people's knowledge and their experience and using that knowledge everywhere he looks. And I've known that for a long time. So my educator, let's do a quick piece of Michael Stratton history. When did you find out that you were unable to be anything but an educator in life, and your folks said, you'll never make $1?
Well, I should be driving truck, right? I should be working at a paper mill.
Hauling the logs up.
Exactly. Yeah. I grew up in a small town in Maine, Madison, Maine, population 5,000, working class family, first generation college student. My mom told me, do whatever you want to do that will make you happy. And I was the first student first person. I still identify myself as a student.
You are. You're an educator. You're a student.
Absolutely. First one in my family, my direct family, extended family, to go to college, and went to Western New England University. It was college when I was there. At that time, it was a smaller liberal arts university. Now it's more of a regional comprehensive. But I think it was at that time, to be honest with you, in my education, that I started to realize that I had this intellectual curiosity that, if it weren't for folks like Bill Ferris, Peter Hess, Michael Meeropol, Don Williams, others who shared with me kind of their role model behavior of what it means to be an educator.
Mm-hmm.
And after I graduated, I had a short stint in practice. And I remember going back to see Bill Ferris and Peter Hess and going, I'm not a big fan of this. I feel like something's missing.
Yeah.
And so I went to graduate school, and it was in my master's in public administration program at the University of Albany at the Rockefeller College of Public Affairs.
Mm-hmm.
I had a faculty member, Sue Fairman, who's an alum of Management Org Behavior Teaching Society, who took me under her wings, as did David McCaffrey. These are, folks from R1 institutions who said, you've got a passion for teaching, for research, for service, and helped me understand what that meant. And so during my graduate program at an R1 institution, I soon realized I wanted to be a teacher scholar. And what that meant was I loved the research I was doing, but I really wanted to have an impact on students. And I've been a student all my life, which I have been. And I think that's been a considerable part of my identity. And I have to say, if it weren't for mentors who saw the potential, I couldn't. I tell my students today, I don't think I would have thought I'd be here where I am today. I mean, a lot of us don't have this sense of confidence in ourselves that we know where we're going to be in 20 years. And I think this is a prime example of that.
But you when you were at Asheville, your previous place, we were a faculty member and a faculty leader. That was essentially the same. It was a liberal arts sort of institution with a little bit of a business school sort of stuck on the side, and yet you had a range of motion, as I recall, at Asheville, where you were in conversation with people from liberal arts, the sciences, all of that, because it all pertains to a good business development person.
Yeah, I think at the heart of it, the study of organizations is the liberal arts. I think at the end of the day, we are cultivating citizens we want to be empathetic, responsible, engaged, and my undergraduate training taught me that. I was a liberal studies major. I wasn't a management major. I wasn't an econ major or a political science major. I helped, thanks to my faculty, help create my own major.
Create a hybrid,
studies.
Right?
Yes,
right, yeah.
And multi and interdisciplinary learning. And I think that's what the study of organizations leadership is. And I was at UNC Asheville, the designated public liberal arts university of North Carolina for 10 years. And it was a real experiment for me to go through the ranks of academia, assistant, associate, full, taking on academic leadership positions throughout, and seeing that we can influence students and guide students and mentor students through this inter and multidisciplinary life, realizing that students didn't necessarily have to be so specialized and narrowly trained. Matter of fact, the word training was a negative term. And that we wanted students to take courses in classics and biology. And during my time there, it was amazing to see the opportunity to bring art students together with management students. To bring ideas that art students had, or bio students or chem students, to help engage them with accounting and management marketing students and help them bring those ideas to life. And that's really what I brought to Georgia College too, is this idea of working across disciplines, across silos, that we are not just educating production workers. We're not just educating those who are, there for simply just a job. That these are individuals who need to ask critical questions, who need to challenge authority, who need to think about their peers in their community, to think about their responsibility in democracy. And I'll say this: I had a conversation with a PhD student today who happened to be at Georgia College for a position on campus for an interview, and he asked me. I've never been asked this question by a candidate today, and it was quite influential, and it was probably about 10 hours ago. And he said, I'm pretty confident I know what the impact of my research is, or research is, generally speaking, on policy making and the like. But what's the impact of teaching? Of course, you'd think I would ask him that as the dean,
president of the Society of Teaching,
right? So, and he may or may not have not known that, but I thought it was a phenomenal question he asked. Like, what impact do we in the classroom have on the students? And obviously, I think with respect to humility, I kind of threw it back to him and said, well, to your point. That Dave, that we are still learners ourselves. But I said to him that at the end of the day, folks may read your article, they may not read your article. You may have impact on policy making or decision making in organizations, but your interaction with the student on the ground every single day, mentoring them, supporting them, listening to them, helping them navigate not just the content in the classroom, but outside the classroom, has tremendous impact. I mean, just from a network analysis of connections and from a humanistic perspective. I mean, you were hearing that student, you were understanding where they're coming from, that connection. And throughout my time in higher education, whether it be a student to now, at the end of the day, that's what's driven me, is that connection to the student. And I learned so much from my students. I say this all the time to my colleagues that I can't wait to get back in the classroom. Granted, there are days that I think my classroom is my office, but
it is in a way.
I do miss the students. There's no
Do you
doubt about that.
have you're not teaching at this point? Then eventually you can, once you sort things out.
Yeah. So I'm
added into your role.
Yeah, I'm in my second year at Georgia College as dean, and I will. At this point, I made the decision. I'll teach an org behavior class in spring of 2023 undergraduate. So I'm face to face, very excited about that.
That'll be like dessert after a couple of years.
Plus and it will be Monday evening, so it will be dessert after Monday.
A couple of things I want to pick up on from what you just shared, Michael. First, when you started out, you mentioned Bill Ferris and several others who saw something in you. And now we flip up to the arc of this moment, and you're saying that that's impact the teachers can have, that we see something perhaps that the student doesn't see, and particularly the ones who are a little more difficult to see that, the more introverted, the quiet ones, the ones who have had less reinforcement, but to bring them to a higher point of self-regard, as well as a greater awareness with that liberal view that you espouse. That's pretty damn important. Now, let me give you a quick sample of why I'm proud, too, of being an educator. I finished a podcast recording just before supper tonight. Supper. You ever heard that word? Mike and I are both from Maine, so it's not dinner, it's supper. But anyway,
I think it's pretty cold up there.
It is
today.
Yeah, well, that's what they say, but they're always bragging. But this fellow who's now almost 60 saw me that I was doing the podcast, and he reached out to me. He was my student 36 years ago. His name is Bob Lothry. 36 years ago. And when we get started on this, he's telling me what I assigned. He's telling me some of the little devices I invented. That was my first year there at that school, Central Connecticut State University. And of course, I'm cheating a little bit on this self promotion, because I used to bring him back to talk to my classes. I used to bring classes out to the Hartford where he was building the contact centers. Back in the day, they were quite unique, the call-in centers.
Absolutely.
And I was so thrilled that he remembered. But on the other hand, I'm seeing what he's doing now for these entry-level people who come into these contact centers for the big P&C companies running. He's doing this work now for, and I'm thinking, yes, now there is my impact. Here he is 36 years later, trying to find all kinds of ways to bring the stakes of being in that company up for these people so they want to stay and they want to grow. He's doing all that stuff, and chapter and verse for anything you and I would teach out of a really good OB
Right.
book. So that's good. That's really the way it works. Thinking of that, going back to when you were a faculty member at Asheville, do you think of someone you took under your wing, and have you heard from her or him lately?
Wow. Yeah, I try to stay in connection. I had a student. I was in the airport, going to a conference in DC probably about a month ago, and he reached out, and he's now on the our advisory board for UNC Asheville for the department I was in, and he just reached out. He's now at a one of the big 5 accounting firms, and I hadn't heard from him in a while, but I had him in both my organizational behavior class, but also a seminar course I had taught in organizational politics. And this is somebody right out of undergrad, and brilliant kid, just so talented. I actually was telling him he needs to get a PhD in accounting. And I mean, he was brilliant in OB and accounting. So,
the perfect match for business,
right? And now he was just telling me, he's like, I'm doing great in this firm. I love it doing consulting, but I really miss the opportunity to dig deeper.
Wow.
And I know, and he was on this as a young alum on our advisory board at Asheville, and he said to me, I remember your classes. You just pushed us. And, I was pretty non-traditional in my courses. I didn't give tests. I didn't do any of those things, thanks to my mentors. And obviously, I learned best through reading, application, writing, reflecting, not through memorization and regurgitation. And he's one example of somebody who reached out and was thankful. One of the beauties of UNC Asheville, to be honest with you, was we had a program, a humanities program, where faculty from across disciplines could teach in this 4-course sequence, freshman to senior, of and it was pre-Western Civ all the way to contemporary. And I taught the senior capstone, which was post-World War II to today. And I've had students from all disciplines. And
must have been wonderful.
Oh, it really helped define my academic identity. I mean, the literature, and it was a team-taught course, meaning we, from across disciplines, developed the content and the readings. And in the class, in our particular section, we could have our specific exercises, assignments, or what have you. But working alongside music professors, sociology professors, chemistry professors, all thinking of post-World War to today from those disciplinary areas. It was brilliant. And to hear from those students to this day that I had, and now they're working in advertising or working, or going to graduate school. It's been quite rewarding. But what I think is the most fascinating aspect of this is to hear from students who maybe you didn't anticipate hearing from.
Oh yeah.
Those students,
Oh yeah.
those students who, they weren't the A students, and they reach out on LinkedIn or what have you, and they just those students, and I will give Lee Bowman and Terry Deal tons of credit for my org behavior class. And I'm teaching OB in spring of 2023, and I will use their book, no matter if it's not a current edition or not.
Oh yeah.
But those students who say to me, I'm still using Bowman and Deal reframing organizations, still using that to this day. It's on my shelf in my cubicle or in my office or at home. It's really unbelievable.
Let's switch. Let's switch to back to your presidency for a moment. Not even a moment, because it's so important. Very, very early in my time, when I was a doctoral student of Petervale, I was hearing rumbles about the need for organization behavior professors, researchers, to find a bit more spotlight in the business schools. And Peter and David Bradford and John Miller and several others, I think it was after I finished in 1974, but it was around that time that they were saying, well, let's just talk about it. Let's meet. But what they wanted to talk about was teaching. They're all on their way to premier publication records and the rest. They wanted to talk about teaching. They were concerned that they couldn't teach the way they wanted to, and what the students needed if they were going to be successful in a business or any kind of institution. So anyway, that was way back, and we talked about it just before we started the recording. 50 years is going to be the current lifespan of this organization behavior teaching society, now called Management and Organization Behavior Teaching Society, with every expectation that it'll be another 50. But in the core of that is what brings people to it from all over the world now is they want to talk teaching. They want to share the thrills and chills, and there are chills of teaching. They need to feel there's one place where it's okay, completely okay, to brag about their teaching or to share stories about their students like we are. Why would they need that when they're working on all these different campuses? Because it's not always the easiest thing. So the society has played a considerably important role in us developing ourselves as teachers. But where is it now, Michael? Where is teaching now? And what is in conversation that's going to keep teaching in the middle of things and away from the periphery?
Yeah, I mean, on a global scale, I mean, we're seeing shifts across cultures where, whether it's South America or in Oceania or in parts of Europe and Africa, where the pedagogy is shifting, and I think we have an opportunity here to learn from each other, and the Western ways of teaching. And there are many different ways of teaching, experiential or a Socratic method or lecturing, what have you. I think the use of technology, high impact practices, and the like are really crossing borders, and we're now learning from different cultures about what we can do and what works. And now that the Management and Org Behavior Teaching Society is really global. I mean, we are truly. We now have an area of teacher scholars in Oceania, and they've been engaged for years in the Journal of Management Education. But we're continually trying to globalize and understand not just what we know and what we can apply, but what is happening on the ground in those particular cultures that we might be able to help better understand here. I think, and as a dean interviewing doctoral candidates, hearing about some of the work that's happening in PhD programs to help prep these students. I think the most successful doctoral programs are those who are embedding, teaching workshops and leveraging their centers for teaching and learning. Not just giving them an opportunity to be a TA or teaching a course, but the preparatory work, giving time for them to learn how to be successful early on as an educator. Not all doctoral students from R1 institutions go to R1 institutions.
Oh, no.
We've known that for years.
Yeah, there's so many more opportunities beyond those schools. No,
absolutely. And the pressures for those students, and not understanding what it means. They're coming into an institution that's a teacher scholar model, regional comprehensive, what have you, and they are deer in a headlights. And a place like MOBTS is there for them, obviously to help develop them and to support them as a community, as a network. But I'm seeing a much more open community of experimentation, that this is the time to use the classroom to experiment. Now, I tell my chairs, I tell my faculty, use this time. Use your time in the classroom to experiment. Yes, you're on the tenure track. Yes, you're being evaluated. But sometimes to succeed and to do well, it takes more than just one chance, one semester, one set of course evaluations. The course evaluations as they are, and we know how they are. There are multiple points during the semester, during the academic year, for you to hear from students, to hear from your peers about your teaching. And so I actually think we're in a really unique situation where the pandemic in particular has brought us back to focusing on the quality of the student learner, the student professor, learner professor experience. That's right. And now we're taking a closer look at that. The students are, at least at Georgia College and some of the other institutions I'm familiar with, they were just ready to be back in the classroom.
Right.
And I think talking with my faculty colleagues, it was the same. They're ready to be back in the classroom. There are limitations to the technology. That's probably a whole other podcast. But that interpersonal connection in the classroom, I don't think will ever be lost. I think obviously there are different academic markets, educational markets, but there's something very special about that interaction in the classroom. And I don't think that's going to be lost.
I think that's why Peter and John and David and others, Alan, the folks who were very young in their careers, but had that feeling that they definitely wanted to make impact as teachers, as well as scholars. I think that was their concern. And I would say at this point, hearing you, if any of them were able to hear, and certainly if Peter Vail were able to hear you, he'd be saying, thank God. It's because if the technology side really continued to overwhelm the presence that one could have in person with people who were also learners, co-learners, if you will, it would have been an awful end to a wonderful thing that we value so much. But I think now it's a matter of mix and match, and a lot of more ways to express myself. One thing that a couple of my former students, as I've had on the podcast, and they go back to their experience. And in fact, my David Bradford hour last June was to bring on a former student, Jackie, who was my student 20 some years before, and who's currently doing very wonderful things in the field of leadership development. And basically she would remember whatever possible way that I could get them to use the very arcane technology of that day to be able to communicate across the class and share each other's writings and thoughts. she remembered it was a pain in the neck. We had nothing like Blackboard then, not even close, but we jury-rigged stuff. And so that was my example of how, if you really want to bring technology in, make it an instrument for their learning, and it'll work cool. It'll work great. But hey, one thing about our society, all those years that I did attend the conferences, we had a lot of laughs. We if we tried something and it bombed in a class, we'd laugh about it with the students. And that kind of candor, that kind of joy, that's a word we don't hear a lot these days, is so crucial to teaching.
Well, yeah, no, I think demonstrating humility to your students is probably so powerful. I mean, it is that you're not the sage on the stage. Yes, you've taken all these courses, you've taught for all these years, you have whatever practitioner experience you have, and you're coming into you've read more than they have.
Good chance of that.
but no matter if they're a first or second year student taking org behavior, they've been exposed to organizations from the time they were born.
That's right.
And they have experience, and their experience matters, and they have perspective. I mean, even just their observations of their parents or their family members or their friends, they've been exposed to organizations their entire lives as a consumer, as a citizen. And, I think that is, I tell my faculty colleagues, junior especially, how important it is throughout the semester to take the temperature of what's happening. Maybe that exercise you've been using for years just is not working with this group for some reason, and acknowledge it. Ask them, pivot, and maybe that
tear it up right in front of them.
Yes, right in front of them. That syllabus, right? The syllabus, is a contract, and you say to them, well, now's the time to reassess. It could be the 4th week of the semester, the 6th week of the semester.
Yeah.
At the end of every semester, I conclude with, I take one class period when I was teaching, and I'll probably do it again when I teach in spring in 2023. And I started doing it, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And it was such a fascinating learning experience where I would ask students 4 questions. What was the most, memorable learning experience in the semester? What assignment did we use? What have you? What was the most impactful takeaway from the semester? So assignment, big takeaway. What did you learn? What could I have done differently to facilitate your learning? And then the last question is, what could you have done differently? Facilitate your learning.
Fair is fair.
Fair is fair. And I would split them into small groups. Typically, I leveraged the teams we had in that semester. And I'd ask them those 4 questions, and they'd spend, 30 or 40 minutes on it. And I'd bring it back, and goodness, how candid they would be. And I had a student come up to me after and say, I've never felt like I've been that empowered before. That and not afraid to say what he said,
Yeah.
And obviously, some of the feedback was interesting, to say the least, about things that I had thought, learned at MOBTS or other places. Like, this is rock solid.
Yeah.
This is what I should be doing. And then the class is like, no, we are not benefiting from this whatsoever. I mean, I think it ages you. You realize,
look at my hair, and I'm only 30.
Yeah, exactly. That exercise doesn't work so well anymore, right? Or that case study. And I think more so for improving for the next semester, I think it as a practice to the students as future managers, leaders, working with your staff, your colleagues, your associates, what's working, what's not working. Learn that process of questioning, learn that process of reflecting and continuous improvement. And I know continuous improvement, me as a dean, right? But this idea that
it's a reality.
What is not working, what is working and what is not working, we have to continually ask that question.
Yeah.
And as a faculty member, at least we have this structured time frame of a semester or quarter or what have you, where we get to ask these questions. We should be asking. Faculty are held accountable just like any other employee in an organization. And I say to my junior faculty colleagues and senior faculty colleagues, take that time. Take that time to learn from them. They're spending the whole semester learning from you. Show some humility and ask them about their experience. And for the faculty who struggle, you know, especially at the beginning of the semester or they had a really difficult semester prior, I encourage them to do it midway through the semester, really to get to know their students. And I think as a senior educator in my career anyway, to me, that has made such a difference. And the students have said to me, I know it doesn't affect my grade right now. I know it doesn't affect what we did this semester, but if it can affect this next student, you know, this assignment was transformational. Or they'll say, this did not work whatsoever. Don't do it again. You know, but I think what's been, I think, the most fun in terms of conversation and debate in the classroom is when we're doing these 4 questions toward the end of the semester, you'll have a debate between the students, right? One group will say, no, this was the best exercise. I learned so much. And the other's like, no, don't do this again. So
they're actually experiencing what the workplace will be delivering to them.
Absolutely.
And even as it's evolving into new frames. And I would say, and so moving into the end of time here, that when I was bringing up Bob and what he was doing with his contact center folks, he put that right there. He said, I am, he's a senior guy, up there. And he said, I ask him constantly, not only how are they doing, but how are we doing? What can we do better? And he said, you see someone working in Atlanta, maybe a high school diploma, African-American, single mom, on that phone, having these calls coming in. My house burned down, a truck ran it, and with a huge emotional labor that they're doing. And he said, just by engaging her, listening, and giving her some freedom, sometimes having to push her manager out of the way a little bit, said it's incredible to see that kind of someone blossoming out of a stereotyped role where they were, if anything, kind of overhead. If there's only a way to automate the claim calls, we would. Right. In fact, I wrote a book about that, a novel in 2006, Inside Knowledge, because that's what we were seeing. Anyway, sir, I want you to be able to give a plug to our 49th conference, where and when, and then one more thought, if you will, about taking you out 10 years from now. So let's start with the easy one to answer. Where and when for our 49th Management Organization Behavior Teaching Conference?
Sure. We are going to be at Cal Poly Pomona in Southern California for 49th Annual MOBTS Conference, June 8th through 11th. We will be there. We'll have some pre-conference activities for our Doctoral Institute and our Early Educator Institute, but the primary conference will be June 11th through June 8th through the 11th. And then I'll also give a plug to our international MOBTS. Right. And that will be June 22nd to the 25th. So right after our conference in Cal Poly Pomona, we'll be heading off to the University of Mannheim.
In Germany. Wow.
Absolutely.
This is the first year we're back on the ground after the 2 years, like most places, we had to do the conference virtually. But I must tell you that you and Brandon Chapier and others did a masterful job of adapting with very short notice back two years ago to going totally online and keeping us together as a society. that was crucial to keep us together as a society. And so I'm excited that people who are able to get to this conference will experience living in the dorms and eating in the caf and all the things that made us all quite humble and very proud, too, of getting to these conferences. Now, where you are, this is 2022, 2032. I'm going to be older than dirt, but I'm going to come chasing you down and say, okay, another podcast, because I'll be on episode, 465. Where are you now, Michael, in 10 years, and what are you doing? Are you an educator?
I will. Thank you for that. I will be an educator. That's all I'm going to.
And the rest, will be making it up as you go along.
I have. I do not know. I have met folks over my time who have that plan every 5 years. They know where they're going, and there are days that I want to be a provost. There are days that I want to continue on the path in academic leadership, and honestly, there are days I want to be back in the classroom. I don't know. 10 years from now, I will be an educator. I think I'll still be at a liberal arts university, public or private. I think this just core to my identity. And yeah, I can't predict that far out, but I will be an educator.
And we'll be connecting at the 10 years from now, the 59th.
59th. Almost, yes.
Have you picked a site yet for the 10 years? That's the next president's job.
That's, when I'm done my term as president, I will have close to have been 10 years on the board. So I think there's time for others. And I joined the board when I was a junior faculty at UNC Asheville prior to the 40th anniversary of MOBTS. So it has been a tremendous privilege. I came to my first conference when I was a doctoral student at Albany, and thanks to Bill Ferris and Sue Fairman telling me, hey, go to OBTC, what it used to be called, and I showed up with a suit jacket on, and everybody looked at me a little bit oddly. What was I doing? But as a doctoral student, you don't know. And I was part of the Doctoral Institute, and it had changed my life forever. And
what school was that at, Mike?
That was at Scranton.
Yeah, I was
2000. 2005.
Yeah, that was an interesting climbing those hills to get to the dorm.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
There was always something, but they were right to send you, and
it changed my life forever.
It was a huge change. I think Jerry Biberman, who hosted that, is
Jerry,
well into his retirement now, would say, yeah, that was one of the good things I did. Jerry would say that. I did good on that one.
He did very well. Yeah. He did very well.
So this has been wonderful. I will be turning off the recording in a moment, and we'll say goodbye. And I'm looking forward to the hello when we're absolutely face to face at the 50th. Hopefully it'll be somewhere where I can get a train to or drive to.
We'll make sure of that.
And we'll be celebrating. So
awesome.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it.
If you'd like to hear more, listen in on Spotify, Automatic, and Apple Podcasts, or go to inactionresearch.com/podcast-page. And if you'd like to learn more about social inaction and the nature of practice, head over to inactionresearch.com for more information. Thank you for supporting this show. We look forward to hearing from you soon.